My brothers and sisters in the light, stop. Before you pay another bill, before you write another check, before you send another payment, before you hand over another dollar to creditors and collectors and companies that demand your money, stop. There is something you must do first. Something critically important that you have probably never been taught. Something the Essenes did before every single payment for over 200 years. Something that transformed the act of paying bills from a moment of anxiety and loss into a moment of worship and declaration and even joy. The Essenes had a law about paying money, not a suggestion, not a guideline. A law, a specific law that governed every financial transaction without exception. Before any money left their hands, before any payment was made for any reason, whether large or small, whether to a friend or to a stranger, whether willingly or reluctantly, they would stop and read a specific verse from Scripture. They would meditate on it until its truth penetrated their hearts. They would speak it out loud so that the spiritual realm could hear their declaration. Only then, only after this practice was complete, would they release the payment. This practice seems strange to modern minds. What difference could reading a verse make? The bill is still due. The money still leaves your account. The obligation is still met. The bank balance still decreases by the same amount. How could a few words, spoken before payment, change anything about the financial reality you face? But the Essenes understood something that we have completely forgotten in our modern secularized world. Something that the banks do not teach. Something that financial advisors never mention. Something that your parents probably did not know to tell you. The act of paying is not just a financial transaction, it is a spiritual act. Every single time money leaves your hands, something happens in the spiritual realm. Something real, something consequential. And what happens in that realm depends entirely on your posture, your heart condition, your declarations when the money leaves. For most people, paying bills is an act of pure anxiety. They pay with resentment simmering in their hearts. They pay with fear gripping their stomachs. They pay while worrying obsessively about whether they will have enough left to survive. They pay while thinking negative thoughts about money, about their situation, about the companies and people demanding payment. They curse under their breath. They feel victimized. They feel diminished. They feel that something precious is being taken from them against their will. And all of this negative energy, all of this fear and resentment and anxiety, goes with the money. It poisons the transaction at a spiritual level. It closes channels that should be open. It creates agreements with scarcity and lack. It invites the spirit of poverty to take up permanent residence in their finances. Every bill paid in fear becomes a brick in the prison that holds them captive to financial anxiety. The Essenes paid differently. They paid from a completely different posture. They paid from a place of worship and trust rather than resentment and fear. They paid as an act of faith, declaring truth about God's ownership and provision. They paid while speaking words of blessing over the departing money. And this posture, this radical difference in how they released payment, transformed the act of paying from something that drained them spiritually into something that actually strengthened them spiritually and financially. The verse they read is found in the book of Psalms. It is Psalm 24, verse 1. In Hebrew, it begins with the words La Adonai Haaretz. In English it reads, "The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it, the world, and all who live in it." This single verse was the foundation of all Essene economics. They carved it on the entrance to their treasury. They read it before every payment without exception. They meditated on it daily in their personal prayers. They taught it to their children before teaching them anything else about money. And it shaped their entire relationship with finances in ways that produced 200 years of prosperity, while the rest of the world struggled with the same financial chaos you experience today. Let me explain why this verse is so powerful and why reading it before paying bills transforms the experience completely. First, the verse establishes ownership. The earth is the Lord's, not yours, not the bank's, not the government's, not the company sending you a bill. The earth and everything in it belongs to God. Every dollar that passes through your hands is His dollar, temporarily entrusted to your stewardship. When you pay a bill, you are not losing your money. You are directing God's money according to the obligations He has allowed in your life. This shift in perspective is revolutionary. Most people feel that paying bills takes away what is theirs. They feel diminished by every payment. They feel that their resources are shrinking, their security is weakening, their position is deteriorating. But when you understand that the money was never yours to begin with, payment becomes simple obedience. You are a steward distributing the master's resources according to the master's purposes. Second, the verse establishes abundance. Everything in it, not some things, everything, all the silver, all the gold, all the resources, all the provision. Everything belongs to God, and God has everything. He is not poor. He is not limited. He is not worried about running out. The owner of everything cannot experience lack. When you read this verse before paying, you are reminding yourself that you serve an unlimited God. The bill in front of you may seem large, your resources may seem small, but your God owns everything. If He wants you to pay this bill, He is fully capable of providing the resources. If He has allowed this obligation, He has also prepared the provision. Third, the verse establishes relationship. The earth is the Lord's, not some distant deity, not some abstract force. The Lord, Adonai, the covenant God of Israel who has entered into relationship with His people. The God who made promises to Abraham and keeps them to this day. The God who calls you His child and takes responsibility for your provision. When you read this verse before paying, you are not approaching finances as an orphan struggling to survive in a hostile world. You are approaching finances as a child whose father owns everything. Children do not worry about paying bills. Parents handle such things. When you remember whose child you are, anxiety loses its grip. The Essenes would hold their payment in their hands, whether it was coins or goods or any form of value, and they would speak Psalm 24:1 out loud before releasing it. They would say, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it. This money belongs to Him. I am His steward, releasing His resources according to His purposes. I pay this obligation in faith, not fear. I pay from abundance, not scarcity. I pay as a child of the owner of all things." Then, and only then, would they release the payment. This practice changed everything. The anxiety that usually accompanies paying bills disappeared. The resentment toward creditors dissolved. The fear of not having enough lifted. In its place came peace, trust, even joy. The Essenes actually looked forward to paying their obligations because each payment became an act of worship. Before I continue with how to practice this in your own life, let me share something important. What I am teaching today is just the beginning. The complete Essene wealth system has been compiled into a 21-day protocol that I have prepared for those who are serious about permanent transformation. It is called the Essene Wealth Code, 21 Days to Financial Freedom. In this guide, you will find this practice explained in full detail, along with additional verses for specific financial situations and 20 other practices that will transform your relationship with money. The link is in the description below. Now let me teach you exactly how to implement this practice. The practice has 5 steps. Follow them every time you pay any bill, no matter how small or how large. Step 1. Before you pay, pause. Do not rush to complete the payment. Do not act out of anxiety or urgency, even if the bill is overdue, even if collectors are calling, even if you feel pressure to get it done quickly. Pause. Take a breath. Prepare yourself for what is about to happen. Step 2. Hold the payment in your hands or place your hands on the device you are using to pay. If you are writing a check, hold it. If you are paying online, place your hands on the keyboard or phone. If you are handing cash to someone, hold the cash. Create a physical connection between yourself and the money that is about to leave. Step 3. Speak Psalm 24:1 out loud. Say the words clearly and deliberately. The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it, the world, and all who live in it. As you speak, meditate on the meaning. Remember who owns everything. Remember whose child you are. Remember that this money is being directed by the owner's steward according to the owner's purposes. Step 4. Add a personal declaration. After speaking the verse, add words like these. This money belongs to God. I release it in faith, not fear. I pay this obligation as an act of worship. I trust that my Father who owns everything will continue to provide for my needs. I receive peace as this payment leaves my hands. Step 5. Release the payment with blessing. Send the money on its way with a posture of blessing rather than resentment, even if you are paying a company you do not like, even if the bill seems unfair, even if you wish you did not have this obligation. Release it with blessing. Say something like, I release this payment with blessing. May it accomplish good purposes. May it return to me multiplied according to God's economy. These 5 steps take only 30 seconds to a minute, but they transform the experience of paying bills completely. Instead of anxiety, peace. Instead of resentment, worship. Instead of fear, faith. If you are finding value in these ancient secrets, take a moment to subscribe to this channel and tap the notification bell. Every week I reveal another practice from the caves of Qumran. These are practices that have been hidden for 2,000 years. Subscribe now so you do not miss a single revelation, and I want you to do something right now. In the comments below, type, I read before I pay. When you type this, you are committing to never again pay a bill without first reading Psalm 24:1 and declaring truth over the transaction. Type it now. I read before I pay. Now let me tell you about a man who learned this practice and how it transformed his relationship with money. This story is preserved in the Essene records as a teaching example for those who struggle with financial anxiety. In the Essene records, there is an account of a merchant named Ezekiel who came to the community in a state of complete financial chaos. He was not poor by any external measure. He actually earned a good income, better than most people in his region. He had a successful trade. Customers sought him out. Work was plentiful. By all objective measures, he should have been prosperous and at peace. But he could never seem to get ahead. Money came in, but money went out just as quickly, often faster. Every month was a struggle to make ends meet. Every payment was a crisis that consumed his thoughts and emotions. He lived in constant, grinding anxiety about his finances, even though, by all reasonable calculation, he should have had more than enough. His wife noticed it. His children felt it. The tension in his home was thick enough to cut with a knife. He would lie awake at night, calculating numbers. He would snap at his family when bills came due. He would avoid opening letters because he could not face what they might demand. The cycle had continued for years, draining his joy, poisoning his relationships, making him a shadow of the man he used to be. The elders welcomed him and asked him about his practices when paying money. How did he handle bills and obligations? What was his emotional state when money left his hands? What did he think and feel and say when he made payments? Ezekiel described what most people today would describe, what you yourself might describe if someone asked you the same questions. He dreaded paying bills. He put them off as long as possible because the very sight of them made him anxious. He would stack them in a pile and try not to look at them. When he finally paid, forced by deadlines and threats, he did so with resentment and fear churning in his gut. He would curse under his breath as money left his hands. He would mutter complaints about the unfairness of it all. He would worry for days afterward about whether he had enough left to survive until more money came in. The whole experience was utterly miserable, and he repeated it multiple times every month. The elders nodded slowly. They had heard this story many times before from many different people. They explained to Ezekiel that his posture when paying was poisoning his finances at the spiritual root. Every payment made in fear and resentment was closing channels rather than opening them. Every negative word spoken over departing money was creating spiritual agreements with scarcity and lack. Every curse muttered against creditors was inviting corresponding curses into his own life. His own attitude, his own words, his own emotional posture was inviting the spirit of poverty to make a permanent home in his finances. No amount of income would ever be enough as long as he continued paying this way. Ezekiel was stunned. He had never considered that how he paid might matter as much as what he paid. He had focused entirely on the amounts, the numbers, the mathematics of his situation. The spiritual dimension had never occurred to him. The elders taught him the practice of reading Psalm 24:1 before every payment. They explained the theology behind it in careful detail. They walked him through the 5 steps one by one. They told him to practice it without exception, even for the smallest purchases at the market, even when he did not feel like it, even when he was in a hurry, even when the practice seemed pointless or inconvenient. Ezekiel was skeptical. How could reading a verse change his financial situation? The bills would still be exactly the same. The money would still leave his hands. The mathematics would not change by a single coin. But he had tried everything else, every strategy, every scheme, every approach, and nothing had worked. He was desperate enough to try something that seemed foolish. He committed to the practice. The first bill he paid using the new method was a payment to a supplier who had been harassing him for weeks with increasingly hostile messages. Ezekiel did not like this supplier. He resented the debt he owed. He resented the supplier's tone. He wanted to pay it quickly, throw the money at the man, and be done with the whole unpleasant business forever. But he had committed to the practice, so he followed the steps, even though every part of him wanted to rush through. He paused before paying, forcing himself to slow down. He held the coins in his hands, feeling their weight. He spoke Psalm 24:1 out loud, the words feeling strange on his lips. "The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it." As he spoke the words, he felt something shift inside him, something subtle but real. The resentment that had been boiling in his chest began to lift, like steam rising from a pot. He continued with the personal declaration, the words awkward but sincere. "This money belongs to God. I release it in faith, not fear. I pay this obligation as an act of worship." Then he released the payment with blessing, which was the hardest part. Blessing this supplier who had harassed him was the last thing he wanted to do. But he did it anyway. Something strange happened in the aftermath. The anxiety he usually felt after paying, that gnawing worry that always followed him for days, did not come. Instead, there was peace, an unusual, unexpected peace. He did not spend the rest of the day calculating whether he had enough left. He did not lie awake that night running numbers in his head. He felt, for the first time in longer than he could remember, that his finances were going to be okay, that he was going to be okay. He continued the practice with every payment from that day forward. Large bills, small purchases, everything without exception. Within a month, he noticed changes he could not logically explain. Money seemed to stretch further than it should have. Unexpected income appeared from sources he had forgotten. A customer who owed him an old debt that Ezekiel had written off as lost suddenly appeared and paid every coin that was owed. A supplier offered him better terms without being asked. Opportunities arose that had not existed before. Within 3 months, Ezekiel's financial chaos had transformed into something he had never experienced in his adult life: financial peace. He was earning approximately the same amount. His expenses were similar. The mathematics had not changed dramatically, but everything felt completely different. He was no longer anxious about money. He actually looked forward to paying bills because each payment had become an opportunity to worship, to declare truth, to align himself with spiritual reality. He later said that the practice had not just changed his finances, it had changed his soul. The resentment he had carried for years toward money, toward creditors, toward the whole system of obligation and payment had dissolved like morning mist. In its place was gratitude, peace, and trust. He understood finally that he was not a struggling individual fighting alone against a hostile economic system. He was a child of the owner of everything, simply directing his father's resources according to his father's purposes. And children of wealthy fathers do not need to live in financial anxiety. This same transformation is available to you starting today. Let me speak directly to your situation right now. You may be watching this video with a stack of bills weighing on your mind. You may have letters you have not opened sitting on your counter because you are afraid of what they contain. You may be dreading the payments you need to make this week, this month, this year. You may be calculating whether you have enough, running the numbers over and over, worrying about what will happen if you fall short, resenting the obligations that claim your money before you can use it for anything else. I understand. I have heard from thousands of people who feel exactly the way you feel right now. The weight of financial obligation is crushing. The anxiety is exhausting. The resentment is poisoning your joy and your relationships and your peace. But I want you to understand something important. Your external situation may not change overnight. The bills will still come. The obligations will still exist. The mathematics will still be challenging. But your internal experience of those circumstances can change immediately. Today, with the very next payment you make, the anxiety you feel is not inevitable. It is learned. It is a response you have been conditioned to have. And it can be unlearned. It can be replaced with something better. The Essenes proved this for over 200 years. People who should have been anxious were not. People who had obligations were at peace. People who paid bills actually experienced joy in the process. The difference was not their circumstances. The difference was their practice. I want you to change your approach starting with the very next payment you make. Do not pay another bill in anxiety and fear. Do not release another dollar with resentment and worry. Stop. Pause. Read Psalm 24:1. Speak it out loud. Let the truth of God's ownership and provision penetrate your heart. Declare truth over the transaction. Release the payment with genuine blessing, not grudging compliance. Do this consistently, without exception, and watch what happens in your life. Watch what happens in your emotions. Watch what happens in your finances. The Essenes practiced this for over 200 years. For over 200 years, they paid their obligations in peace rather than anxiety. They never experienced the financial chaos that plagued the rest of the world. The practice works. It has always worked. It will work for you if you commit to it. If you are ready for complete transformation, the 21-day protocol is waiting. The Essene Wealth Code will guide you through this practice and 20 other practices that will transform your relationship with money forever. The link is in the description. Before you leave, type one more time, I read before I pay. Let this be your commitment. Let this be the beginning of a new way of handling every financial obligation. Never again pay from fear. Always pay from faith. My brothers and sisters in the light, remember what the Essenes taught about paying bills. Stop before every payment. Read Psalm 24:1. Declare truth over the transaction. Release the payment with blessing. The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it. This simple truth, spoken before every payment, transformed the financial lives of an entire community for over 200 years. It will transform your financial life as well. You are not paying your bills. You are directing the owner's resources. You are not losing your money. You are fulfilling obligations as a faithful steward. You are not struggling against a hostile system. You are worshiping through your financial obedience. May the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob give you peace in every payment. May anxiety flee from your finances. May every dollar you release return to you multiplied. May you never again pay a bill in fear, but always in faith. Go in peace, go in power, go in prosperity. Until next time, this is Rabbi Enoch, keeper of the scrolls, servant of the light. Shalom,